Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm your host, Gaël Lebris, for the very first ever International Day of the Chapters. It's a great pleasure and an honor to have you today for this live event that we announced nearly 2 years ago during the General Assembly 2020. And today, here we are. We're finally having this International Day of the Chapter that is a celebration of the diversity of our membership and of our presence worldwide. We put together a great show for you today. We're going to stay together for about 1 hour and a half, 2 hours with a welcome address from our President Mark Waller, some words from me about the state of our chapters, and then you will have 3 examples of the great achievements, the great things that our chapters are doing all around the world. And then last but definitely not the least, we will have a keynote speech from Philippe Fonta. But without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Mark Waller, President of ENAC Alumni, for his welcome address. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Gaël, and everyone. Hello, everyone, for this International Chapter Day. So first of all, I am very happy to welcome you all to this webinar. And maybe a few words quick about myself. And as you know, as Gaël told you, I'm ENAC Alumni President. I'm also currently, I used to be the ENAC Director for 8 years, and I'm currently in charge of the Paris CDG Airport, and as well as Deputy Executive Director of the Group ADP. So maybe a few words about ENAC Alumni. You know that ENAC Alumni is a large network of something around 24,000 alumni all over the world, with definitely a prominent worldwide and prominent international footprint. For example, just to give you some example and ideas, when I left ENAC as the director of ENAC, we were training more non-French students than French students. Just that this gives you how much now ENAC has become international, and that this increase definitely is international footprint and our international footprint as well. Well, you know that we making this or managing this network of chapters and ENAC alumni all over the world. It's managing this network and making it very lively and liveful. It's a major objective of our association. And these for many reasons, or I would say at least 2 main reasons. First of all, to maintain the relationships and brotherhood that we have from having shared the ENAC for a couple of years. And I remember that this brotherhood and relationship really exist. When I was ENAC director, I used to go all over the world, and every time I went somewhere, I was warmly welcomed by our ENAC Alumni Fellowship, and anywhere in the world. The second reason is that you know that aviation is by nature very international. And when we have a problem somewhere, an issue somewhere, everywhere, anywhere in the world, this issue is probably shared by others in other parts of the world. And that's why those are the 2 main reasons for which we have to maintain these chapters, these international chapters activity very lively and very liveful as well. Well, in managing this network, our goal is that our ENAC alumni activity and services be accessible to everyone, regardless where they come from, where they are located and where the next chapter of their journey will be. We have now more than 40 chapters, and for this, I have to thanks and express, like everyone, my great gratitude to Gael for the work he have done. You know, definitely a great work. So he has now, we have now, thanks to him, 40 chapters connecting alumni and students together, offering services to their local communities, as well as conducting research and creating forums for advanced aviation, I would say at the local level, but also at the regional level, and in coordination with our think tanks. You know that in the future, aviation will face a lot of issues. And I think that, and first of all, the decarbonization of our activity. And I think it's our goal, and it's our duty as well, to create together the aviation of tomorrow. I strongly believe that our global community of alumni could and would contribute to this effort for a more sustainable aviation that will keeps innovation and will provide in the future a unique mobility solution to the whole world. And you know that in France now we are very, very active on promoting decarbonation activities, even to our minister. And we are going to provide him with some conclusion of the work group that have been working on this decarbonation. And I'm counting on you to join our work group in order to promote some and propose some example of some solutions to decarbonize faster our activity. So again, thank you very much for being there. Thank you very much to spend times in the several workshops that Gael has organized. And then I'm telling you, I hope that we have the pleasure to see you very soon. For the time being, I leave the floor as well to Gael. Thank you very much for all.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Mark, for your leadership. Because when you were at leading ENAC, or today as president of ENAC alumni, you have been a tremendous supporter of the international identity of our community. So thank you again for embracing our international identity and promoting it at all levels. Well, now I would like to share with you some updates and some news about our international development. Here is a 2022 state of the chapters. And let's start with kind of a back to the future. You know, I don't know if you remember that slide I was presenting during the 2020 General Assembly. This was the state of our chapters in 2018. We had 8 chapters. And these where we are as of today. In 2022, as of May 2022, we have 45 chapters around the world, national and regional chapters. So that's a major achievement. Congratulations to you, to us, for the inception of all these 40 chapters around the world. We could not achieve that, of course, without your contribution. And I would like to give a special thanks to all the chairs, vice chairs, and coordinators that are running these chapters, these programs and activities on the day-to-day basis. Okay. And here we are with that large footprint. We are not covering yet the entire world, but that's our goal again, is that if you remember my 2020 goal, if you want, is that by 2025, we achieve a global coverage. Why are we doing all of that? It's of course for you. And our goal is that wherever you are, wherever you are from, wherever you are today, or where your future projects are located. You find someone, you find a local representative, if you want, of the ENAC alumni family in order to find the information that you need and potentially find help for being successful with your projects, right? Again, you could say here there is a lot of blue, but what is it? What do we have in terms of services, products, achievements, and so on in the field? Here is a kind of shopping list that we defined together at the 2020 General Assembly when we started a new phase in our international development. And as of today, we have delivered on all of these different items. Just very quickly, we said that we were going to create a council of the chapters to make sure that the chairs and vice chairs have a platform where to share best practices, to raise their hand if they need help, and so on. So that's it, it's in place, and we are meeting on a quarterly basis. Appoint local and diverse leaders. This is very important to us. About 3/4 of both chairs and vice chairs were born in the country or region of the chapter they are leading, or are permanent resident living for many years in that country or region. This is very important for us. We want local leaders to be visible and we want them to be committed to their local community. Make an impact in advanced aviation globally and locally. In a few minutes, you will hear about specific examples from a few of our chapters. We have a lot of programs with both alumni and non-alumni, as well as students being part of all these roundtables, task forces, and so on. One example is, of course, the future of airports, a vision of 2040 and 2070 with regional focus groups, but also information shared with institutions all around the world. Make contents available in English, but also in other languages. For too long, we have communicated in French only. For many years now, we have been developing bilingual or more communications, to make sure that what we do is accessible to everyone. And, we're talking about French and English, but we have other chapters, like, for instance, in the Andean community, of course, they use Spanish on a daily basis in order, again, to be accessible to everyone. Achieving at least 24 chapters by the end of 2021. We completely blown up that target. We were talking about 24 chapters by the end of 2021. We were having 40 chapters as of December 2021, and today 45, So again, big kudos to everyone for this major achievement. And again, we have that ultimate goal is to achieve a global coverage by 2025. Okay, is that it? Can we be happy with what we have today? Of course not. We need to do more. And we heard you, I communicate regularly with many of you. You come to me and to other leaders of the association in order to voice your needs or concerns and so on. And we build the next roadmap with a target by the end of this year in order to deliver always more activities and programs that you can use. For instance, we are going to hold by the end of this year at least 2 virtual town halls. What is that? This is a virtual event where you have leaders from the associations, leaders from the board of administrators, board of executives, but also your chairs and vice chairs attending and listening to you and answering to your question. Okay, that's what we want to do to make sure that we are on track in order to deliver activities and programs that you can use, that can improve your daily life, that can advance your career and so on. Okay, we want to do more career development and technical webinars in English, you know, and I commend fellow Vice President Elena Jakovic for all the great job she has been coordinating on the matter. There are already a bunch of webinars in French that have been held over the past few months or years, actually, throughout the pandemic. We keep organizing them. Now, the next step is to have more of these webinars on career development or technical matters in English, and it's coming in the next coming months. Please stay tuned. Go on our website, check the calendar of the website, and you will see events in English popping up in the coming weeks and months. Okay, translate our status in English. Okay, that's very simple thing, but today they're only available in French. Again, by the end of summer 2022, you will have a version in English. Okay, because you should have access to this information in English if you are not fluent in French, of course. Have an easy access to all the information regarding how to become a member and how to step forward to become a member of the board or a vice president or so on. So what we're going to do is that on the website of ENAC Alumni, we're going to create 2 very simple web pages to have this information available to you. You should not have to dig in on the website to find the status and understand how it works. Okay, we're going to have a membership and leadership 101 web pages available very soon on the website. When I say very soon, is by the end of summer 2022. Okay, that's a promise. Further chapter and leadership appointments, we keep appointing leaders. If you think that you could be one of them, you want to become a chair, a vice chair, of coordinator, please raise your hand. Okay, we need good people, you know, involved in their community in order to lead all these groups. Last but not the least, we want to standardize all the practices across the chapter. So we are still in the process of creating our handbook of standards and practices in order to promote excellence, you know, among the chairs and vice chairs. Okay, so all of these by the end of December 2022. Mark my word. Okay. What can you do now? So of course you can become an active member. Okay. Basically paying your annual due. This is very important because, of course, your membership fee fuels everything we do, okay? And becoming an active member gives you also, of course, the possibility to become a candidate to the Board of Administrators and also to vote for the Board of Administrators. Volunteer with your local chapter. You're going to see some of them, some of these leaders today during this live event, but we have 45 chapters. So if you're ready to contribute, you know, to all of these activities, again, raise your hand. And if you don't know who you're supposed to reach out to, send me an email, okay, even easier, and I will give you the contact information of your local chair or vice chair. No chapter, no problem. Why don't you create your own chapter? Why don't you become that leader? Okay, so again, send me an email and I will type my email address again in the chat box in a moment to make sure that you have it. Participate in local events, make your voice heard. You know, if you think that we're missing something, if you think that there is something we're not doing that we should be doing, let us know. Again, send us an email, let us know, or let your local chair or vice chair knows. Post your job offers with ENAC alumni. Throughout that pandemic that has impacted our industry, we need, you know, to work together. We need to promote employment and so on. And it's something very easy that you can do. You can post your job offers on our website. It's very easy. In 5 minutes, you create your account for free. You can post all the job offers that you want. And last but not the least, on social media, you can tag job offers in order to let your fellow alumni and students know that there is something for them here that is in the scope of their skill sets and so on. And for that is very simple. You use the tag recruit ENAC, or you can actually translate that hashtag in the language of the job offer if it's not, if there is a need for a specific language. Okay, all of that, these are very simple actions. So we count on you. You can make a difference. Okay. Now, it's time to learn from a specific projects at the national and regional level. And before I introduce our two next speakers, I want to remind you that this event is interactive. If you have any questions, please, you can type them in the chat box. I don't know if we will have time for all your questions, but we will keep them aside for the town hall that we will be organizing later this year. Okay, something else, you can also talk about this event and promote all the great things we are doing on social media with the hashtag IDC 2022. Last but not the least, in terms of interactivity, it's going to be time for you to win some goodies from ENAC and ENAC alumni. In a moment, you will have Estelle copy pasting a question in the chat box, okay? And if you are first to reply with the right answer, of course, well, you will be winning goodies. So keep an eye on the chat box, okay?
Yes.
And without further ado, it's now time to hear from the national think tank of Cameroon with Gladys Flora Kete-Oyono, chair of ENAC Alumni Cameroon, and Ernest Tse, her vice chair. Ernest and Gladys, the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you, Gael. Let me share my screen first. Not yet. Okay. That is right. So I hope everyone is seeing the screen. I have to put it in PowerPoint. Okay, so good afternoon, good morning, everyone, wherever you can be at this moment. It's my great honor and pleasure to be here for this International Day of Chapters of ENAC Alumni as the current chair of ENAC Alumni Cameroon. So we are here to present the project that has been submitted to the vote and that has been selected among those projects initiated by the chapters, and we had the honor to be selected for this presentation. So the objective of the presentation will be for us to give few words about ENAC Alumni Cameroon, to present the context and rationale of that project, the national think tank, its objectives, and a few words about what has been done so far within these projects. So a few words about our chapter. We have our coordinating team that is presented here. We are very lucky to have a senior mentor in our country, Mrs. Paul Koki, who is the current GM of Civil Aviation Authority. She's providing us actually all the support we can need for our chapter. Me as the chair from Transport Ministry, and Ernest, my vice chair, working at Civil Aviation Authority. Our chapter has been launched in May 2021, so last year. And currently we have like 41 members. And what is very interesting here is that we have all the state bodies of civil aviation represented, like me and some two others members. We have a very lot of members from the main airport operator, Aéroport du Cameroun, as well as a very large group from Civil Aviation Authority. We have members from the air navigation service provider, ASEGNA, that certainly most of you can know. A representative also from the national carrier Camerco. We have also one representative from the Regional Safety Oversight Organization. And we also think that it was very important for us to give the opportunities to members of ENAC alumni, Cameroonian from ENAC alumni, based abroad, and who are always interested in following what is going on in their sector from their native country. So we also included them, and we are always very happy to welcome any Cameroonian based abroad and who is interested to join our group. We also have one retired member, who is very interesting for us because he had a very huge and interesting experience that we can share with him. So what was very challenging when we were launching the chapter were to find what will make it attractive for the members. You know, in those different organizations that we presented, we have people with high position. So you can imagine they are very busy in their day-to-day work. So the challenge was to identify something that will make our chapter attractive and relevant for them, and also to become a very active actor for civil aviation development and promotion in our region. So these are the main reasons that triggered the decision of launching that initiative of having a national think tank that will be very helpful for the professional development of our members, but also a kind of decision help for decision maker in our country. So now, how do we maintain the chapter active? We have quarterly call, and we have a permanent, I would say, 24-hour active WhatsApp group where we share news about our sector locally, things like incidents, any events, any news that concerns civil aviation in Cameroon or abroad. We instantly share it with the member, and so that is why they can find it as a very important tool and very relevant platform for them to always be updated about what is going on in civil aviation. So also we develop a local members registry, and we make it available for everyone in case you can be needing to contact someone for particular information during your work, your professional activity. So about the national think tank, the main triggering idea is that we know that civil aviation is moving very fast, and it requires states to be in a permanent effort of alignment to the evolution and to the trends, but very important to be while taking into account your local environment. So our national think tank has as objective to address our local challenges with regard to what is going on, what are the trends at the international level or regional level, so we can address specific topics in order to identify the gaps and identify also what can be the relevant solution to those gaps that we identify. We also use that think tank to give value and to promote our local achievements by the local leaders. We need to encourage them by promoting them and give value to what they are doing. And also for the general public, mainly students and other people, to try to make civil aviation more easy to understand and clarify people like students, what are the different opportunities in terms of career that the civil aviation environment can offer to them. So succeeding to this goal will require that we have a high level of awareness about what's going on locally and also abroad. So what has been done so far? Our first topic within our national think tank was the study about an assessment of the response to COVID-19 in the Cameroon civil aviation sector, the feedback for a sustainable restart. So we conducted those works from May to December 2021, and the results has been shared with the members and also with our senior mentor, who has a privileged position to disseminate the information and the result of these studies. So in this study particularly, we compare what has been done in Cameroon. We compare it to the recommendation of the ICAO, namely the CART, the Council recommendation for the restart start of civil aviation. So we identify what has been done in terms of, what good points, and what were the points where we identify that there's room of improvement in our country regarding to that response to COVID-19 in civil aviation. So now I'll give the floor to my Vice Chair, Ernest, to continue with the presentation about our perspectives.
Thank you, Ms. Akete, for giving me the floor. And I am Mr. Ernest, Vice Chair of the Cameroon chapter of ENAC Alumni. So as perspectives of our chapter, we are going to carry out a reflection on a project which will aid us in reaching out to increase their interest in civil aviation and how they can do to get into the field and obtain civil aviation related jobs, because generally speaking in Cameroon, people are not too aware of what is going on in the aviation sector. So one of our goals in the future would be to make it something known by everyone, what we are doing in the sector and how they can participate and contribute. And this project shall be called Lumière sur l'aérien. It will be basically to promote aviation activities in Cameroon. Also, as a chapter, we are going to continue to address new and relevant topics in the framework of our national think tank, topics which will help our local industry to move forward, and why not the international community. We are also looking forward to give support to any new ENAC alumni chapter which wishes to open in our sub-region, notably Central Africa or Africa as a whole, to give them the roadmap to follow to be able to carry out their operations smoothly. Also, in the framework of our chapter, we intend to improve the communication which we carry out in our local companies on the activities which the chapter is doing, because it will be unnecessary to carry out a lot of work and in the end it's not used or no one knows what we are doing. So at each level of each organization, each stakeholder in the country, we are going to put in place means of communication so that all what we do is shared amongst the members of our organizations who are not necessarily ENAC alumni members. So these are the perspectives which we are looking forward to. Next slide, please. So at this moment, we would like to express our gratitude, firstly, to the President, Mr. Mark Walla, for his leadership, also to the International Coordinator, Gael, and also to Estelle for their guidance, which they have been providing to us. We also thank our godmother, Ms. Koki, for implementing the decisions which we take and spearheading our chapter. And we thank our members for their involvement and the whole ENAC alumni community as a whole for being a relevant and efficient task force. So thank you all for listening to us today. This is what we prepared to share with you this evening or this morning, depending on where you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Gladys and Ernest, for sharing about everything that you're doing, not only in Cameroon, but for the benefit of the entire region, you know, through, for instance, Central Africa focus group of the future of airports. And, you know, for us, Africa is very important. The continent is booming. If you don't believe me, read our white papers on the future of airports available on our website. And here we have a unique chance because air transportation can support the development of the different regions and communities. We have a large community of members in Africa, and here we are. Here we can connect together these thought aviation leaders. We can bring ideas also from other regions, and we can do all of that under the umbrella of ENAC alumni. And it's what you're doing through the national think tank, but also the regional task force of the future of airports, that you've been sharing the findings, for instance, with ACI Africa, So again, everything we're doing, it's useless if we just keep it for us. The goal is really to leverage all that good energy, all that expertise and experience that we have in our chapters and our network in order to contribute to the advancements of aviation, isn't it? So again, thank you for everything you've been doing at the local and regional level. And now it's time for our next speaker. Let's fly north to the United Kingdom with the future of the UK airports with Martin Lavrieux, chair of INAC Alumni UK. Martin, the floor is yours.
Hi everyone. Everyone hear me?
Yes, it's okay, Martin.
And can you see me as well? I'm going to share my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Perfect, great. Hi everyone. So I'm Martin Lavrieux. I'm the chair of the UK chapter. Today I'm going to speak about the UK focus group of the future of airports, which is a research initiative that was really the engine at the creation of the chapter in March 2020. The chapter represents around 100 alumni working and living in United Kingdom. So as you are probably aware, or maybe not, there have been a global research project called the Future of Airports, a vision of 2040-2070, which is a research initiative of the airport think tank. These have been really successful with really good materials and really good outputs that are available on the INAC Alumni website on the section Future of Airports. The goal of the UK focus group was to see all the findings of the Future of Airport global analysis apply or not to the UK. So that was the main objective, and this have been organized through 6 virtual roundtables of around 1 hour and a half, where we discuss various topics with a large panel of various experts. But first, the initiative was led by myself, so aviation consultant at Steers, more specialized in economic regulation of aviation as well as business advisory. And there was also the former vice chair of the UK chapter, Alexandra Ott, who is a senior airport planner at Mott MacDonald. She now moved to Nice, where she's based, but we now have Marin as a new vice chair, Marin Bessel. So just regarding the panel member, so as you can see here, there is really various panel member from various backgrounds. We had some consultants from airports, obviously, airport planning, but also airline and maintenance, as well as aviation economics. We also had a researcher and lecturer from really successful university here in the UK. We also had an airport manager, including François Libre, that was business change manager at Manchester Airport. We also had a representative and a board member of a really influential UK aviation organization, which is British Aviation Group. We had also the head of aviation policy of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport in the UK. So really a panel with various backgrounds to cover all the aspects of airports and stakeholders. The panel was made of 2/3 of alumni and one third of non-alumni as well that you can see here. So just to widen the discussion and have make our organization known as well through non-alumni member. Here is just a picture of one of our virtual roundtable. It was just to put an image on our discussion and to see the faces of some of our panel members. All was done virtually, as I said to you, and mainly through the various lockdown here in the UK. So it was actually a great moment to connect with various industry colleagues. Without being too technical, I wanted to show to you from an overview of some of our findings. So we talked about 11 various topics in total. Here is just some interesting input from 5 of them. So this topic, the United Kingdom in 2014-2070, was kind of the first topic we discussed. It kind of set the scene to what will be the country in 2040 and 2070, so in the future, and what these changes will, all these changes, sorry, will impact aviation. One of the big finding here was about the aging of the population. So as you can see here on the World Population Prospects, a UN report, the share of people over 65 years old will grow massively up to 2017 and even beyond. That means more senior travel at UK airports in the future, and a lot of challenges in terms of adapting the facility and service to senior customers, in terms of accessibility, but as well in terms of training staff to various health conditions, and as well to the fact that some senior traveler will not be tech savvy people, so they will need to have this adaptation about technology as well. The second big chunk that is really specific to the UK is the wider implementation of HS2, so which is the high-speed rail equivalent of the TGV in France. It could have various impacts, including the remove of the demand on London hubs demand on regional airports, and the increasing connectivity option for UK residents. Just to give you an example of this, with HS2, the journey time between London and Birmingham Airport will be reduced to 38 minutes. This will make Birmingham Airport potentially the 7th airport of London, and yeah, that will generate some change of demand there. Also, we could expect with HS2 that domestic flight to and from London will be reduced thanks to a better train connectivity, obviously. However, during our discussion, we flagged as well that any kind of domestic flight between secondary medium-sized city, such as a flight from Manchester to Portsmouth, for example, will have to remain because the train option may not be competitive or quick enough. One of the second topic we talked about was one regarding UK airport business model. and new source of funding as well. What you have to know is that UK airports have been privatized in the 80s. Thanks to that, they became way more efficient operationally and consumer oriented. Everyone in the panel agreed that airports in the UK were really, really successful, and we don't foresee any change to their business model in the future. However, some of airports in the UK have been assessed by the Civil Aviation Authority as in monopoly situation on their market, like London Gatwick and Heathrow, and that's why they are regulated economically. As you know, UK airport and well as all the airports almost have been strongly hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. So at the moment, there is some discussion to modify this regulation mechanism because basically there is a control on the cost of the airports, operating costs as well as capital expenditure, and there is also a control on what airports charge to airline when they fly in and out of the airport. They want to adapt this mechanism in order for airport to recover losses from previous crises. So in this case, COVID. So increase the charge in the future in order to recover their loss of profit in the year before. So that's something that may change, and there is discussion going on this. Otherwise, we also talk about smart airports at the area of information technology. And one of the main discussion here was regarding airport collaborative decision making, ACDM. For the people that don't know what is it, this is a concept that relies on information sharing of the real-time status of each flight between various asset stakeholders like airlines, airport operator, ground handler, and air traffic controller. This process has recently been widely deployed in UK larger airports, as you can see here on the map. Last year it was deployed in Stansted Airport, for example. We think that ACDM has also a great potential at UK regional airports, and we also think that they will have more evolved step of these new processes with a more integrated and coordinated approach from surface access to the airspace at airport. So something not exclusively airside, but which includes the airport and total airport. This system is already in research and development, and it's called SWIM, System-Wide Information Management. Other discussion, it was about airspace and airside compatibility. So it was about trying to understand what will be the new aircraft of the future. What kind of flying vehicles are we going to see in the sky, and the change of demand as well of various aircraft, and see how the airspace, but particularly the airport, can accommodate this new vehicles, and what are the challenges there, and what are the trends in the future. One of the big trends that we can see in the UK and in various other countries as well is eVTOL, which vertical takeoff and landing vehicles. These are kind of the new electric helicopters. That seems a really good opportunity to improve dramatically regional connectivity in the UK, and it's one of the key objectives of the Aviation 2050 government strategy. There is various discussion at the moment in the UK about how to handle the boom of eVTOL traffic. Obviously, there is already helicopters in the UK, and eVTOL at the moment are considered as the same as helicopter from the regulation point of view. But the fact that the demand for the traffic of these vehicles will increase quite significantly in the future raise some issue, and the government dedicated some funding to various safety cases to operate eVTOL, as well as some task force created by the Civil Aviation Authority. There have been a big announcement in mid-2021 just to illustrate this boom of eVTOL with Virgin Atlantic announcing the purchase of 150 eVTOL. Virgin Atlantic, which is like a really prominent company and airline in the UK. They envisage to do short-haul operation between UK City and the main airport of the country, London Heathrow, Manchester, and London Gatwick, and this is planned for 2024, so quite soon. We had some discussion as well about how to accommodate these new air vehicles close to airports, and one of the solutions that we were thinking about, and that seems a sensible one, which is to develop remote heliports away from runway, where currently there is car parking, for example. So that was one of the output of the discussion. Another topic, and I think it's the last one that we talk about, and I'm going to talk about to you here today, is about passenger terminals and the customer experience. It's a big deal in the UK. The future is a bit challenging because a lot of terminal buildings suffer of a lack of simplicity and modularity. And it's mainly because airports in the UK are quite old, and they have been badly planned at the time. So there is a lot of negative impact on the passenger experience, with specifically the increase of unnecessary walking times to go to gates because of various direction changes and level changes as well. There is various solutions that are explored and that we listed here for the future in order to address this challenge. The first one is moving any kind of utilities or non-passenger assets away from terminal building, so it makes the terminal building and the passenger rooms and space more flexible. Another more extreme solution would be the closing of all terminal and the building of new facility to closing all the terminal and new ones. This it's something to consider really carefully, because it's really expensive, and it can have also significant environmental impact. There is always a trade-off between the renovation of a facility and the demolition and the rebuild. Building some infrastructure and building is quite have a lot of impact on the environment, so that's something to consider carefully. As well, we talked about before the growing number of elderly people. That will be quite a challenge for them to be handled at all the passenger facilities. So today there is a kind of automated people movers, this kind of metros that link various terminal building, and as well there is like travelators. Tomorrow we can expect, for example, automated guided vehicles, like self-driving pods, in order to bring people to the gate, and there is already some in test at London Heathrow at the moment. So that was it for the overview on some of our key findings. There have been way more discussion going on. It was really a good thought exercise and a research initiative that was really interesting, with a lot of learning from all members. Personally, I have learned a lot from all this discussion. As I said, it was really great to connect with peers, specifically during lockdown. This initiative gave a really good impression to the UK chapter, and it started really to bring like a good kernel of UK alumni together. This has been followed up by the recruitment of 2 coordinators for the chapter, as well as the implementation of regular quarterly calls. And we also had like Marine Bessoles that joined us as a vice chair to replace Alexandra 2 or 3 months ago. So things are continue to go. Thank you very much. I don't know if is there any question or if there is anything in the chat?
Yes, thank you, Martin. If you have any questions, please type your question in the chat box, okay? And if we have time, we will address them. Otherwise, we will keep them on the side, either for the town halls or for direct replies by email. Thank you so much, Martin. I think you need to release the screen. And you know, the future of airports is one of our 2 signature research initiative. The second one being, of course, the aviation sustainability working groups that are ongoing. Regarding the future of airports, you can actually download all the white papers of the global analysis on our website, you know, and get information on the next steps, the ongoing regional focus groups, and so on. And this is something that we are in the process of revising based on the input of the regional focus groups. And this is something that we are sharing with institutions, you know, at the local, regional, and global level. You heard about ACI Africa. In the UK, Martin has been sharing with the British Aviation Group, the BAG. In the United States, we have been presenting multiple times to the Transportation Research Board of the National Academies, and that's just a couple of examples of what we are doing. So again, the goal is to spread the word, raise awareness, educate the aviation community about everything that is on the horizon. And now it's time for our third presentation of national and regional projects with Lu Jiang Nguyen, chair of ENAC Alumni USA, and his vice chair, Pierre Boujard, with developing services towards the alumni and students community in the United States. Lu Jiang and Pierre, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gail. Okay, so let me share my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Not yet.
Still not?
Still not. Here we are. Thank you.
Great. Well, good morning, everyone. Oh, sorry. Hello, everyone. My name is Lu Jiang Nguyen. I'm the chair of the US chapter. And I will be presenting to you with my vice chair, Pierre Boujard, what we're developing here in the US for the chapter, the different services, to serve our US ENAC alumni community, but also the students. So I'm very happy here to be part today. So before going too much into details, I want to give you a quick overview of our membership. Here, 112 members, and as you can see in the map, we are located a little bit everywhere, but mostly on the West Coast, Northeast, the region from North Carolina up to New York. And we have also a strong community in Florida. The majority of our members are ENAC, but we have also some EPL people who had masters from ENAC. And this year we have 2 students. One is in Florida Tech in Melbourne. He's doing a double diploma there, partnership with ENAC. And another one also doing a double diploma. He is in Illinois with Illinois Institute of Technology. So among these 100 members, we are unfortunately, I would say 10-ish active members, but each year we are growing, and our last member that want to participate and to be involved in our chapter joined us last May. So we're starting to grow and be more active since the beginning of the chapter. So the US chapter was created end of 2018, and the major objective, well, I think like all the other chapter, was to gather the ENAC community. And we not only wanted to gather, so we had, I would say, 2 levels of objectives here. First one was concerning the current members that are already living and working here. Well, we wanted to gather them, create a foundation of our chapter, create a dynamic to promote ENAC here in the US, in our on the different professional organization that exist here, but also university-wise. So this is the first level, and the second level was more concerning the people, the students, or the alumni that wanted to come here in the US, either just doing a simple internship, but also for students who want to start a career here. I am a good example of it, Pierre also. So yeah, we wanted also to provide support them, helping them, provide all the guidance and the support to start the career here in the US, or if we are talking about students, helping them during their study here. So we had 8, I would say 8 objectives that you can see on the screen. And to achieve all these 8 objectives, well, we created 10 US programs, 10 think tank task forces, sorry, that you can see on the screen, and that we go more in details a little bit after. But the goal was, well, just to provide guidance on specific matters, specific topics, and to achieve the objective that I just presented to you a little bit earlier. And some of them are still ongoing. Thinking about, for example, mentoring is still going to be open for a long time, but some of them are also, we almost finished them. The guidance, the deliverables that we wanted to produce, we're almost at the end of it, and we are going to present it a little bit afterwards. Another one that's Martin just talked about, the future of airports. We also have a task force here in the US. So Pierre, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Mijan. So yeah, we're going to present you the different services we provide to our community. So we have split them into 4 different groups. So the first group is going to be the student services. So the objective of this group of service is to first help the students during their research. So when they are preparing their projects to go abroad, potentially to the US, so provide some additional information so they can make an informed decision. Help them during their preparation of the experience, throughout the experience, and then if they choose to stay or if they choose to go, we'll have a dedicated process so that we can keep helping them throughout their the continuation of their journey. So the first program we have as part of the student services is the US University Partnerships Program. So the idea was to make a comprehensive matrix of the existing partnerships between ENAC and US institutions, but also to have a look at potential other universities and other programs that we could partner with. So then we can make suggestions to ENAC to create new partnerships. So we've developed a matrix listing the type of agreement that's possible. So either an exchange only 6 months, or a double degree, or for example, research partnerships. And then we take a look at the different requirements for the program, the diversity score, the type of campus accommodations and all that, so we can have a good idea of what's proposed by the university. So we took a look at universities with a compatible program with our ENAC program. So with measures in aviation, aerospace, IT, and business. I can go to the next slide. So the next program has been pretty popular with our students. So it's called the mentoring program. So the idea is to pair a newcomer from France or another country, but most probably France, to a well-established alumni in the US. So the idea is that we find a suitable pair, so a mentor that's knowledgeable with the field that the student is looking for. And then they usually exchange on a monthly or bi-monthly basis. And they usually talk about different topics. So either the academic and professional development, so to make sure everything's aligned with the students' projects, but also to take a look at the next steps, either academic or the next steps in their professional career. Usually we also talk about the life in the US, so about accommodation, lodging, transportation, how to handle that. It's useful either when preparing, but also when you arrive in the US, when you're a bit lost. It's good to talk to someone who's been through those steps in the journey to coming to the US. And then we'll also have usually a discussion on administrative questions, so visa, finance, taxes, how to get a driver's license, all of that. So we've listed here the process. So usually we ask questions to the mentee, then we pair them with a volunteer. We make a first introduction session with the chapter's leadership, the mentee and the mentor. Then they have their session, and at the end of the program, we have a feedback session so we can improve the program. Yeah, can go to the next slide. So we also have other initiatives. One of the main ones has been our interactive webinars and Q&A sessions. So that's been particularly helpful for students that are currently at ENAC and want to know more about the US and the opportunities we have in the US. So we've been, instead of doing just formal presentations, we've been doing more interactive sessions so that everyone can ask questions. So we usually split that into 3 or 4 different topics, and people can ask questions, we can answer, follow up with them by email. So it's been pretty popular. The first one, I think we had 35 people. But when we went up to 50 people. So we had extremely good feedback on those, and we will recommend doing the same to other chapters, because that's a good way to exchange and interact with current students and make sure they can make an informed decision when they choose to go to a specific country.
Okay, so one of the task force related to professional support was about license and certification. Here in the US, it's different from the France. Personally, to give you an example, I'm an ENAC, but here in the US, I'm not recognized as an engineer. And to do so, you have to pass a license, the professional engineering license. So the objective of this task force was to list basically all the different license and certification that you can have here in the US, and to see, well, in this big matrix, list not only the requirements that you have to do in order to pass and to obtain this license or certification, but also to provide the gaps of based on an ENAC degree that you have, not talking only about ENAC, but all the other degrees that you have. What are the requirements that you must do before having the license certification? So we already published the first draft last year, and there's a second draft that's we're happy to publish at the end of this month. We just have to publish it within our ENAC community to, well, have their comments and their feedbacks on it.
All right, so the next one for professionals, so more aimed at professional and professional development, is the Professional Organization Task Force. So professional organizations in the US are extremely important. So they are a good source of networking and also industry information. So it's a big part of the professional life for US graduate alumni. So we want set to provide a service so that alumni can identify which of those professional organizations are relevant to their specific field and industry, and how to join those organizations. So we've made a listing of aviation, IT, engineering, and D&I organizations, and we've listed all the services provided, the fees associated with the membership, and the requirements to join those organizations. So the idea is to have a comprehensive list so people can pick and choose, and then it's a great opportunity for them to join those organization and start networking. So when you come to a new country, it's not always easy to create a network. You've got the ENAC alumni network, but talking to people that are in your industry is also extremely important. So that's a task force we've been leading this year. So we have a first draft that's going to be published by the middle of this year, so end of Q2 2022. And we also have other initiatives, so networking events. So we've been working on trying to gather the US community. So because of the size of the country, it's a bit challenging to do because we have people from Florida, New York, Seattle, or California. So that's a bit tricky, but we've been doing a couple after work. So here you have a picture of the New York after work we organized a couple years ago. We also try to meet at industry conferences. So that's a good place where people usually meet. So for example, Liu Jiang and I met in Nashville earlier this year at the AAA symposium. So that's a good way to just make easy way of meeting alumni people and maybe even gathering people outside of the network so we can talk and exchange on industry topics. And then we also have the mentoring program that I mentioned earlier. It's also available for new professionals and also people that will just make a career change or being an expat in the US. So we haven't had that situation yet where a graduate has joined the mentoring program, but we have processes ready for that. So we're ready to do that. So it's not only for students, but also for professionals. Then the third group of services we've been developing is administrative services. So people that have moved to another country, you might know that things are done pretty differently from France. So you have some visa issues that you need to take care of, finance, tax. So that we thought it was an important part of the services we had to provide to our alumni base, especially because it's relevant for both students and professionals. So that's a good task forces we've been leading. The first one being visa and immigration. So we wanted to create a guidance document so people can be more aware about the different options, different requirements associated with different visas. So we've listed the visas associated with different common situations for ENAC people. So either an internship, a substitution, dual degree, a work visa, an expat visa. So all those different situations are associated with specific visa. So we've detailed the eligibility requirements, the procedure associated with getting those visa, and the right and duties linked to those visas. So really important for the people that want to do something similar. Such document does not constitute legal advice, and you should make it clear. It's just guidance. So if people then have specific questions or requirements, they should go to an immigration attorney. So the first version has been published in 2020, and we are just including student visa, and then we are revising that document, including professional visa.
Another administrative services that we're providing, it's also a guidance on income tax for residents. Like Pierre just said earlier, it's different from a country to another. Here in the US, it's a huge country, and it's you have different state, and its different state have also their own income tax specificities. So we just wanted to provide like a simple document guidance on and describe all the tax processes that you have to do here in the US, and also the specificities based on each state. So this first document is still under development, and we want to, I mean, our goal is to publish a first draft Q3 of this year.
All right, and so the last group of services is what we call chapter-wide program. So we wanted to list under that group the other initiatives we have that are targeted at the entire ENAC Alumni USA community. So the first one is the Diversity and Inclusion Task Force. So we've set D&I values and goals for our chapter, and we wanted to make sure that those goals and values are implemented throughout the different actions that we are leading. So we've dedicated a task force leader for this specific part of the program, and he's helping other task leaders in defining goals and actions for each of their specific programs. And then the task force leader is monitoring the implementation of the different actions linked to our D&I goals and values. We are also looking at development and the participation in D&I outreach programs and events in the US. So that's currently under development. We are looking at different options, but the task force leader is working on that.
And the last program that we want to share with you is regarding emergency situation. So we have a program. It's not to substitute to any federal or local recommendation and governments. It's not to substitute to different French embassy recommendation, but it's just to be to provide guidance and to help students or any ENAC alumni in case of a specific and emergency situation, thinking of hurricane season in Florida, for example, COVID-19, while we are also providing them who they could talk if they want specific, if they have a specific question regarding this emergency situations. Well, that's it for what we're doing right now, but that's not the end of it. We still want to grow. We still have different steps before achieving all our objectives. And one of the first one, and I think it's common to all the chapters, is to grow our member community. Like I said, we are 10-ish active members. But each year we're starting to grow more and more, especially students are joining us and helping us and are being more involved to promote ENAC and participate on the different programs that we just presented. And one of the goals we want, because the US is a huge country, we want to do more regional chapter. We're thinking of one in the West Coast, maybe one around New York, one around Florida, to create this different regional chapters. So that's another step that we want to go. Another one is maybe to create more relationship with professional organization here in the US. Pierre just told you that there's a bunch of them, but what we want now is to engage and to start, I don't know, promote. It's a good way to promote what we are doing here, ENAC Alumni US, but also the different task forces and deliverables that ENAC alumni has done. So, and last but not the least, we want to organize, more afterworks. The pandemic, I guess, like everywhere in everyone else, has, let's say, we wouldn't able to organize as much as we wanted afterwards, but that's what we are trying now, since COVID has stepped down a little bit, and we are able to do more face-to-face meetings. So Thank you for listening to us. I was very happy to present you with Pierre all the different services that we have developing here in the US since the beginning. So, and if you have any questions, feel free to write us in the chat box and I will put my email address. So thank you.
Thank you, Lu Jiang and Pierre. That was a lot, isn't it? I mean, a lot of activities, services, programs, you know, again, for you, for our members, you know. And again, you understand that we have two goals in life, you know, as ENAC alumni is, of course, number one, to contribute to the advancement of civil aviation, but number two is also to serve our community worldwide, you know. And you see here through the example of what's being done in the United States, you know, this is kind of the benchmark of what we want to see in every country or region where we have a presence, you know, is to provide these services, to provide this assistance, you know, to our current or prospective members in order to develop our community and help our members. Okay, and now it's time to talk about our Chair of the Year and the Project of the Year. So we have two awards. The first one is Chair of the Year 2021. This is a recognition given by the Council of the Chapters. The vote was held in December 2021, and the winner is Gladys Flora Akete-Oyono, Chair of ENAC Alumni Cameroon, was and sorry, I just realized I was not sharing my screen. Here we are. Sorry about that. So Gladys, congratulations for being our 2021 Chair of the Year. This is definitely well deserved. And please everyone join me in congratulating Gladys for basically everything you've been doing, you know, for the association, but also aviation, generally speaking, at the national and regional level, you know, from the national think tank that you talked about to the future of airports, you know, and all that thought leadership that you are creating, not only with the local ENAC community, but also thought aviation leaders from outside that community in order to think about the future of aviation at the local level. Congratulations, Gladys. And now it's time to reveal the 2021 Project of the Year. So we have the three projects that we handpicked for this year's International Day of the Chapters. Of course, we could not have all the chapters at the same time, you know, talking today. Otherwise, this will be a 6-hour event. And just as a reminder, you know, we don't have all the chapters speaking today at this event, but we have videos from other chapters available on the YouTube channel of the association. Okay, so go on our website or directly on the YouTube channel and you will find videos with news and updates and stories from other chapters. And we will put, of course, the recording of this event on the same YouTube channel. And without further ado, Estelle, please tell me who is the winner.
Yes, I have the honor to announce you the results, and the winner is the USA chapter.
Okay, Lu Jiang and Pierre, congratulations for your selection and election by our members as a Project of the Year, you know, for all these services that you have been developing, again, towards the alumni and students community nationwide in the United States. And that, of course, as I said, is a benchmark for other groups around the world to make sure that we deliver to you, our members, which is a good opportunity for me to remind you that during the 2021 General Assembly last November, we all together we decided to amend, to revise our statutes in order to expand the membership requirements. So we still have, of course, our statutory members. You know, if you hold a degree of one of the program, you know, listed in our statutes, you are automatically a statutory member. But anyone, I insist, interested in our values, our goals, what we are striving for, you can apply for what we call the associate membership. Okay, so to become a member and participate in our activities, think tanks, programs, and so on. Okay. So again, thank you so much for casting your vote for the projects of the year. Congratulations, Lu Jiang, Pierre, and the US chapter. And now it's time for the keynote lecture with Philippe Fonta, INAC 8070, founder and CEO of Scrum Consult. What can I say about Philippe? Over 30 years of experience with the private sector, with institutions, with policy making and standardization bodies, and with NGOs as well. Philippe started his career with Airbus and went through various engineering divisions before becoming the director of environment and head of sustainability at Airbus. He left Airbus to join World Business Council for Sustainable Development, WBCSD, based in Geneva, where he worked on developing a platform for promoting energy efficiency and sustainability in the cement industry. And then more recently in 2019, Philippe created his own consultancy firm, Scrum Consult, for providing advice to corporate entities, organizations, and other platforms on their path towards sustainability. But you know, beyond the impressive resume of Philippe, I believe that there are kind of three key ideas, you know, driving Philippe's journey and Philippe's career. Number one, it's a passion for aviation. Number two, it's his immense dedication to the aviation people. And number three, it's his commitment to sustainable aviation. You know, just a quick personal story. Philippe was attending my graduation ceremony at INAC, you know, and he was one of the thought leaders representing our association. And there's one thing with Philippe, he's always available for good discussions, you know, on strategic matters. And we talked about sustainability, of course. And at that time, he had a key message, you know, that aviation is currently working on its carbon footprint, and aviation is developing a plan to tackle this issue, you know. And here we are in 2022, that plan is being implemented and has a name, is Fly Net Zero 2050, isn't it? So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Philippe Fonta, our keynote speaker for this year's International Day of the Chapters. Thank you, Philippe, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Gail, and hello, everyone, and thanks for this nice introduction. I always have, you know, the reminder of the time when someone tells me that I have 30 years of career. It means that I'm getting old, you know, but that's another
experience,
issue.
Not old, experienced.
Okay, so I'm going to try to share my screen. No, I cannot because you need to unshare your own screen. I don't know if it's Gail or Estelle, but I'm not able. Okay, let me try again now. Okay. Is it this one? I don't know which one is it. It should be this one. Okay, let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes,
and
it's
now
okay.
we can.
And if you see the presentation in full mode and that you're not saying the next slide and you're just saying the correct one, is it correct?
Yes,
Yes,
all
it's
good.
correct.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, before starting, if you give me 1 minute, Gail, I just would like to, as we are in the special day of the chapters, to indicate that yesterday we had a fantastic afterwork of the Swiss chapter. We took the opportunity of the eBase air show, you know, the air show of the business aviation, which happens in Geneva from Monday to tomorrow. And we had the opportunity to meet some colleagues in the evening and have drinks together. And thanks to Guy, the chairman of the Swiss chapter, for organizing that. That was quite interesting and rewarding to discuss on different subjects on that. So a good example of what can be done through the chapters. Don't hesitate when there is an event like that to invite people who are supposed to join to the event to participate in an after work like that. So thanks Guy again, and thanks ENAC alumni for giving this opportunity. So now let me start on the subject and particularly on the subject of sustainable development and air transport. So first of all, what I wanted to talk to you today is a short introduction on sustainable development, on the sustainable development goals, on how the ICAO strategic objectives fit with these sustainable development goals, focused specifically on climate change, and explain to you about the industry commitments and what are the next steps, because it's always a moving and an evolving challenge to keep up to date and to keep being proactive in this subject of sustainability. So first, as an introduction of sustainable development and corporate responsibility, corporate social responsibility, because we hear or we see the different namings and we don't necessarily know if it is the same thing, if it is different, what does it include. So I wanted to do a little bit of summary of what is there. I didn't ask Estelle to ask a question on the quiz about what is sustainable development. Can you give the definition of sustainable development? Because it's a long definition, and I'm not sure that you would have found out unless looking on the web, or unless having 20 years of experience like me in the subject. But to give you this introduction to sustainable development, that was given in a report that you can download on the web, which is called Our Common Future, which was done in 1987 as a result of the work led by a commission chaired by Mrs. Gro Harlem Brundtland, who was previously Prime Minister of Norway, and who was mandated by the United Nations to create a document on sustainable development. And the definition is given as a development that meets the need of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So that's the definition of sustainable development. When you have said that, well, you are not much more advanced, because you don't really understand what you can include in this definition. So the classical way of expressing sustainable development is looking at the triple bottom line. The triple bottom line means that's a combination of environment, social, and economic. And you see that the sustainability part is the central one, the brown one, where it is the intersection of environment, of social, and economics. And obviously, depending on where you are, this intersection is not the same. So in some countries, and I would say probably more rich countries, the environmental and social elements are more important when you want to speak about sustainability, because you don't have to fight for your economics. In other countries, it will be a little bit different. But the intersection is really what is sustainable. So let me come back to the definition and try to give you some key elements of the concept. First of all, sustainable development is a development. This is not a recession. So some people say that you can have a development without an economic growth. For the time being, the way to measure your development is through the GDP, and the GDP accounts for your economic growth. So it means that if you don't have an economic growth, you don't have a development. It's not as simple as that, but due to the time we have, I cannot develop more. But you have the expressions of needs. What is a need? What is the need of our current society? How to meet them? And what will be the needs of the future society? It's important to consider the needs of less developed people as well when you consider that. So today, when you think about aviation, particularly in countries like France or Europe, people say, okay, aviation is a kind of luxury. We can reduce it. In any case, it's only a few people who are traveling by plane, and probably the richest one. And that's a caricature of the sector. We have to answer, is aviation a need of our modern society? As our modern society is globalized, I think it's part of the need of the present. Will it be a need of the future? Well, some people say we can replace aviation by video conferences. We can travel less to do tourism, so it may not be a need of a future society. You have to take into account also that when the Chicago Convention was created in 1944, it was to develop aviation so that aviation could help people and different countries meet with each other, and in a certain way, and I remind you that it was 1944, so the Second World War was not yet over, in a certain way is to help people know each other, and that we avoid having a third world war at a certain point in time. And when we see at the moment what is happening at the doors of Europe with the Ukraine crisis, well, this is something that we have to keep in mind. The peace is not a given, and when we have means that enable people to connect and to know each other, we should try to protect it. The second element is that there is no limit geographically or timely. In other words, the definition of sustainable development means that it's the same for everyone in the world. And because we need to meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs, there is no time boundaries as well. So there is a link between people and a link between generations. And when we try to look at what's happening in air transport, well, basically, aircraft are international by nature. When you build an aircraft, you don't build, for instance, an A320, which is specifically for Europe, or an A320, which is specifically for Asia. This is not the same case as cars, you know. Car manufacturers are producing different models for different places in the world. It's definitely not the case for aircraft, because an aircraft can be operated 5 or 6 years in one airline in Europe, and then go to another place in Asia, and then go to another place in Africa, or vice versa. So it means that aircraft have to be able to be operated with the different regulations everywhere in the world, and they have a very long life cycle. As you can see, between the development, the production, and the lifetime, particularly because then some aircraft are converted into cargo aircraft, you can go to 70 years. So it means that you need, as much as possible, to anticipate the needs of operating this aircraft, or the needs of what an aircraft can deliver as a service, in order to design it and to develop it so that in 50 years it's still efficient and can still be operated. So this is an introduction to sustainable development. So now, what is the difference between sustainable development and corporate social responsibility? So I would say there is no real difference. Sustainable development is the concept, and corporate social responsibility is the way for a company or an organization to implement the concept of sustainable development to the own perimeter of the organization or the company. So when you see the definition of the European Commission, for instance, it's a concept, corporate social responsibility as a concept whereby companies integrate social and environmental concern in their business operations and in their interaction with their stakeholders on a voluntary basis. So that's the way it works. One way to materialize that is to consider the different UN Sustainable Development Goals, which have been defined a few months before the COP21 in Paris, where the Paris Agreement for Climate was done. They have been defined in September 2015, whereas the Paris Agreement was in December 2015. And they follow a first set of goals which were created in 2000 and that were called the Millennium Development Goals. So what does it mean? It means that these Sustainable Development Goals, they define targets to be reached by 2030, and they are defined sustainable goals by sustainable goals. So you have 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and we will see them in a minute. And for each of these Sustainable Development Goals, you have some targets to be achieved by 2030. And globally, you have 169 targets, which makes it very difficult to manage. It was designed initially for states, but now almost every major corporate entity uses the metrics of the Sustainable Development Goals to communicate on their performance with regards to sustainability. There are three major general objectives, which are eradicate poverty, protect the planet, and guarantee the prosperity for all. So you can see that there are social, economic, and environmental issues. And sometimes when these SDGs have been created, we have expanded the traditional 3 Ps, which were people, planet, and profit, to actually 5 Ps, which are people, planet, and profit or prosperity. But in addition, you had partnership and peace. So these are the elements that constitute the creation of the Sustainable Development Goals. So now what these Sustainable Development Goals are. I mentioned that you have 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and you can see them. No poverty, zero hunger, climate action, life on land, etc., etc., etc. And from these 17, the way companies do, and including airlines, airports, etc., is to try to identify which are these goals which are the most relevant, the most material to their activities, in order to prioritize their actions with regards to these Sustainable Development Goals. It's not only picking and choosing the ones for which you have the most interesting story to tell. It's just to identify with your stakeholders. So for airports, it can be including your neighbors. For any company, it includes the supply chain, the customers, etc., etc., to identify which ones are the more relevant in terms of importance for your stakeholders and importance for yourself. So when you look at the different ICAO objectives, and we will come to the strategic objectives of ICAO in a moment, they have mentioned these objectives and they have tried to map these objectives with the Sustainable Development Goals. You can see on the left-hand side, so probably you cannot read completely the elements, but here what you can see on the left side, the 1, 2 to 17, it's exactly the same elements here. The number 1, end poverty in all forms everywhere, no poverty. Okay, so even if you cannot read here, if you take the title here, you have the concept. And the 5 strategic objectives of ICAO, which are safety, which include environment, economic development, security, capacity, and efficiency. You can see that almost every single Sustainable Development Goals is affected by one of the strategic objectives of ICAO. The one which is not considered is the 14, which is life below water. Obviously, aviation does not operate below water, even if people some pretend that there are more aircraft underneath the water than submarine in the sky. So that's true, but we don't have an impact on the water. Actually, we have a little bit impact, but it's very limited. It's if we don't treat all the plastics that you are using on board the aircraft or to deliver the pieces, etc., and if the treatment is not done properly, this plastic can transform into microplastics and finish in the ocean, and then you can have an impact. But basically, it's not the most critical one, it's not the most material one, and that's why the ICAO decided that they are not part of their remit. So the 5 strategic objectives are safety, security and facilitation, environmental protection, air navigation capacity and efficiency, and economic development of air transport. And the one which represents environmental protection is just highlighted, not because it is over the 4 other strategic objectives, it's just because this slide was extracted from an environmental symposium done by ICAO. Okay, so when you go into the environmental protection now, which is the key mission that we look at when we speak about sustainable development, it's not only limited to environmental protection, but when we look at environmental protection, you have 3 main elements, which are limit or reduce the number of people affected by significant aircraft noise, limit or reduce the impact of aviation on emissions on local air quality, and limit or reduce the impact of aviation greenhouse gas emissions on global climate. So these are the 3 key subjects related to environment for operations of aviation. And when you look at that, and if you were doing this materiality exercise that I mentioned, where you draw what is important for your stakeholders and what is important for an airline, for instance, or an airport or an aircraft manufacturer, you will see that global climate will appear on the top priority corner. So that's why I will continue and focus on climate change and CO2, essentially to explain how what is the challenge and how the industry is organized to tackle this challenge. So let's look at climate change and CO2 emissions. If you do this materiality exercise, and I took the example of Air France KLM, you can see that CO2 emissions, that's what I was mentioning, is on top of the corner when you have the importance for the company and the importance for its stakeholders. You see also sustainable aviation fuels, operational performance. Climate change in its concept, in its definition, is much more important for the stakeholders than for the company itself. But the way the operations impact climate change in the performance, in the CO2 emissions, in the fuels, actually is very, very important. And you see this line here is where you define the priority. What is top important for your stakeholders and what is top important for you is what you have to do in priority. So now let's look at CO2. The slide will appear a little bit complex. I will explain it. First of all, you have to know that every ton of conventional fuel that you burn emits 3.16 tons of CO2. This has nothing to do with an aircraft design. This has nothing to do with operation. This is just chemistry. The carbon chain that constitutes the Jet A or Jet A1 fuel makes it that every ton you burn, you emit 1.16 ton of CO2. So it's quite easy to measure if you measure your fuel burn. And you know that fuel burn is measured. And there is a very low uncertainty on that because you just apply the factor 3.16 and you know exactly the emissions. One additional thing that is important to know is once CO2 is emitted, it remains more than 100 years in the atmosphere, sometimes thousands of years. So it means that no matter where you emit it, whether it is on ground, whether it is in the air, whether it is in Europe, in Asia, in North America, in 100 years, this single molecule of CO2 can go everywhere. So that's why you can compensate sometimes some CO2 emissions by investing in projects which are elsewhere, because if you reduce some CO2 emission, if you reduce some CO2 concentration, then you have a positive impact on aviation. So 1 ton of fuel, 3.16 tons of CO2, it looks a very huge impact. It is an impact, but what we can say is when you measure it, and I will start with this, when you say that in 2019, 915 million tons of CO2 have been emitted by civil aviation. And on that, compared to all the man-made CO2 emissions, it's 2%, actually 2.1%, okay? But as soon as 1999, on the mandate of ICAO, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the famous IPCC, you know, the ones who produces its report every 5 years, and they produce their latest report during the beginning of this year, they created a specific report for aviation, which was called Aviation and the Global Atmosphere. And at that time, in 1999, with data which was gathered and which was actually data from 1992, the impact of CO2 emissions was evaluated at 2%. The concentration, I mean, was evaluated at 2% of man-made CO2 emissions. And today, it's 2 to 2.1%. So what does it mean? It means that during this period, from 1992 to today, the absolute emissions of CO2 from aviation has been multiplied by 3, while the traffic was multiplied by 6 or 7. But the share of aviation compared to other activities has remained the same. So it means that the emissions from all other activities, the emissions of CO2, has grown on the same path. This being said, we should not limitate ourselves to CO2, because the specificity of aviation is that we are flying in the air and not necessarily emitting on ground. We are emitting in the air, and we are almost the only activity where we emit in altitude. So we have to look at the impact of these emissions in altitude, particularly for substances emissions, which have a shorter effect, a shorter life. Because if you have a shorter life, it's very important where you emit it. And for that, we have emissions of NOx, oxides of nitrogen, and emissions of water vapor, the condensation trails, the famous, you know, plumes, the white plumes that you see behind the engines. It's called condensation trails, so contrails. Okay, all that has an impact on climate change. When you look at the latest scientific knowledge about it, and don't be afraid by the picture, I will explain it. This is what you have. This is a paper that was published by Manchester Metropolitan University and someone called David Lee, which makes the reference of these emissions. So I will just show you something. If you look at the carbon dioxide emission, which is the second line, the red, when it is color red, it means that it is warming. When it is color blue, it means that it is cooling. So you see that the CO2 is warming, and the band that you can see here, the small line, is the uncertainty. So actually, the radiative forcing is 35.3, but it is something between 31 and 38, to be fully precise. If you look at the contrails and the impact on Cirrus, you can see that the warming effect is much bigger, but that the uncertainty here is 8 times more important than the uncertainty on CO2. So it might be 3 times more than CO2 only, but it can also be something, oh no, it's here, it's 2 times more than CO2 only, but the uncertainty makes that it could be even lower than CO2 itself. So when you hear people saying, okay, here we have almost twice the impact, so we have to apply a coefficient which is 2, and some people are even using a coefficient which is 3, well, you are not comparing apples with apples. You are comparing apples with oranges, because one is a long life substance that is well known by the scientists, and another one is a short-term effect. Sometimes the contrails disappear after a few minutes, and the uncertainty is 8 times more important. One thing that on which I would like to draw your attention, I don't insist on the NOx, because the effect globally is also warming, although some new scientific papers are challenging that. But there is this one, the aerosol interaction from sulfur emissions and from soot emissions. You have nothing today, because the science doesn't know anything and doesn't manage to modelize it or to estimate it. Some people are saying that these impacts could have a cooling effect, which could be as important as the total net aviation. So it means that if it is the case, and I don't pretend it is, we don't know, but we could end up with aviation being completely neutral. So we have to be very careful with what we do, particularly when we try to identify the solutions for the future. So impacts of contrails, as I said, they could be twice the impact of CO2 on climate change. But scientific uncertainties remain, and even on the same route, you can find different results depending on the time of the day. Contrails, they normally form during the end of the afternoon in some parts of the world and in some flight levels. So it's very difficult to generalize this and to find a global impact. Some papers are saying that 2% of the flights are generating 80% of the contrails. So it's very limited. If we could identify where the contrails form, we could possibly try in cooperations with ATM to avoid these zones. Okay. It's an ideal element to feed controversy between the stakeholders, the one who wants to be factual and try to clear the uncertainty, etc. Typically an engineer's approach. Scientists do not know, so we should not account for them until we better know, and we should clear the uncertainties as much as we can. And the NGO's typical approach is we choose the highest multiplicative coefficient, so that we are on the safe side, if you want, and they lobby the agencies and the policymakers to follow that path. And for instance, the French ADEME, who is the Agency for Environment and for Energy Management, they are applying a multiplying factor of 2 to account for non-CO2 emissions. So this being said, just to tell you that this is complex, and everyone needs to work with the scientists to clear the uncertainties. So what are the industry commitments? The commitments from the industry really started in 2009. So it's not something that has happened last year. In 2009, the industry committed into 3 things. The first one is an improvement of energy efficiency of 1.5% per year as a minimum. Then being carbon neutral, it's a carbon neutral growth. So it means that everything which will grow will be compensated, so that from 2020 onwards, there will be no more emissions that comes from the growth of air traffic. And then they committed in 2009 to reduce the absolute CO2 emissions by 50% compared to the level of 2005. Then they realized that with the Paris Agreement, with the reports of the IPCC that are becoming more and more alarming, the commitments needed to be more than that. So the first two ones, 1.5% per year, is remaining. The climate neutral growth is remaining, but the new concept that was done in 2050, the objective is not to halve the emissions that were done in 2005, sorry, here, so that to halve them, but it's to achieve net zero CO2 emissions by 2050 in using the technology, the operations, the fuels with the sustainable aviation fuels, and the market-based measures like CORSIA, for instance. They created a document, and I put here the address so that you can download when you get my slides. They created a report which is called Waypoint 2050, by which they identified 3 different scenarios in addition to the business as usual, to try and identify how we can get to net zero in 2050. And they are still discussing this Thursday in Montreal. That's why I mentioned this dialogue, the Aviation Net Zero Dialogue, where airlines, airports, manufacturers, air navigation service providers, ICAO, they are all meeting to see how things are evolving in this direction. When I was speaking about the different scenarios, this is a little bit how it looks like. So you have the progression that was happening, then you have, in any case, the COVID effect, and the rebound that should come back to the 2019 level by 2023, 2024. And then you get to net zero in 2050 in all cases. But you have different scenarios depending on if you insist on the technology here, if you insist a little bit more on operations, or if you are very aggressive in terms of sustainable aviation fuels. And depending on that, see the gray zone, which is a compensation by market-based measures like CORSIA. You can see that it can be 6, 7, 8% still remaining in 2050 to compensate for all the emissions that were not reduced by the other elements. So when we speak about sustainable aviation fuel, what it is? Well, if we start with conventional aviation fuel, that's typically the Jet A, Jet A1, and Jet B, and the aviation gasoline for general aviation. It's something which is derived exactly from petroleum sources, which include crude oil, natural gas, liquid condensate, heavy oil, oil shale, and oil sands. An alternative fuel is something which is drop-in. Drop-in, what does it mean? It means that it can be replacing conventional aviation fuel completely or through a blending of this fuel. And it is derived from sources other than petroleum. It can be coal, it can be natural gas, it can be biomass, and it can be hydrogenated fat and oils. The interest is that it has the potential to be sustainably produced and to generate lower carbon emissions than the conventional aviation fuel on a life cycle basis. This is not yet a SAF. A SAF is an alternative fuel, but in addition, it had to meet the sustainability criteria, which should achieve a net greenhouse gas emissions reduction on a life cycle basis, which should contribute to local social and economic development, and which should avoid competition with food and water in its production. So therefore, when we speak about SAF, there are 2 types of certification. One is a technical certification to ensure that it is the same, comparable as conventional fuel in operations, and then the sustainability certification to improve the sustainability criteria of aviation. When you look at the potential that you have from 2050 to 2020 to 2050, and when you consider electric or hydrogen fuel cells, hydrogen or fuel cells, and the SAF, whether you look at commuter, regional, short haul, medium haul, or long haul, you see that SAF has a huge potential because it is available today, not in enough quantity, but it is available today, and you have plenty of flights which are flying with SAF blended with conventional fuel. But it's also a solution for medium and long haul aircraft and flights for which electric and hydrogen will have a lot of difficulties on that. I will skip that one, and I will just come back to the ICAO basket of measures. We looked at what the industry is doing. Now we are looking at what the regulator is doing. Regulator, ICAO, the standard making body, which is a UN agency. It's the same as the other UN agency, but this one is specialized for aviation. Their objective was to have 2% fuel improvement per year, so more ambitious than the industry. The industry from 2009 to 2020 actually achieved 2.6%. So it's much bigger than the 1% that they had committed and much bigger than what the ICAO committed them to do. It's carbon neutral growth, but as you can see, there is no objective for 2050. There is no objective for a long-term goal at the moment. So they developed CORSIA. CORSIA, in order to maintain the carbon neutral growth here that you can see. CORSIA stands for Carbon Offsetting and Reduction Scheme for International Aviation. And all ICAO member states, whether they participate in CORSIA or not, they have to measure the international flights, the CO2 emissions and the fuel burn, and report to ICAO since 2019. So it's already being put in place. And then the compensation mechanism is still in a pilot phase here. And the pilot and the first phase, so up to end of 2026, is just voluntary. So it's a state who decides to participate or not to participate in CORSIA. And obviously the flights which are concerned in the implementation of the different limits and the let's say the allowances that are given are only flights between countries who are volunteer to participate in the CORSIA. More than 110 countries have already joined the pilot phase, compared to 193 states which are part of the United Nations. So it's already a good sign, and more are joining. Okay, so what are the next steps? So we mentioned, we say that the ICAO, they don't have a long-term goal like the net zero in 2050, but they are working on it. And since 2019 and the latest assembly, they have created a task group to define a long-term aspirational goal for ICAO member states. And they have to deliver something at the 41st session of the ICAO Assembly, which is this fall in September, October 2022. In the meantime, the Committee on Aviation and Environmental Protection, in its 12th meeting, which happened in February this year, they published a few weeks after, well, they presented it during the meeting, but they published it in March, actually, a technical report on the feasibility of this long-term goal. And they are demonstrating that it should be possible for states to define this long-term aspirational goal. And there will be a high-level meeting, which will happen in July this year, and the Assembly in September, October, where hopefully they will agree on setting up a long-term aspirational goal. And honestly, there is no other goal than being net zero in 2050. You know, it's you cannot say, I want to achieve a certain level of CO2 emissions in 2050. No, the goal has to go in this direction. So to conclude on these elements, air transport is considered or mentioned. When I say consider, is not targeted. It's mentioned as a hard to abate sector when looking at CO2 emissions reduction. It's like cement manufacturing or steel manufacturing. It's like shipping. And it represents 2% of my main emissions, but it's highly visible. Other emissions than CO2 are probably much higher impact, but much higher uncertainties for sure on their impact. So beyond the traditional levels that we have, which are technologies, operation, air traffic management, sustainable aviation fuel appears to be a very promising solution because it is available now as drop-in fuel. So it means that you can blend it with traditional fuel. You don't have to change your engines. You don't have to change your systems. You just have to get the fuel. Demand is getting higher and higher, but it's higher than the supply. The costs are high, for the time being 2 to 5 times more than the cost of traditional fuel. That's why the support for policymakers and financial community is essential. Let's remember what the policymakers did with photovoltaic panels or with windmills. Well, they helped the technology so that the cost went down. So if they do the same way with regards to sustainable aviation fuel, that will become one of the solutions. And in the meantime, there is the compensation, which can be done with offsets or buying some credits from other projects to compensate for the emissions of aviation. And that's through CORSIA, which is the only international and global system for compensation. And as a conclusion, I would say that when we look at climate change, the enemy is the CO2, it's not the flight itself. So thank you very much. And if you have any question, I would be very happy to try and answer that.
Thank you, Philippe, for this very comprehensive lecture on that very complex issue. Maybe we can address a couple of questions, even if we are a bit over time. Let me scroll down and up the comment box.
There was Jean-David and Paul Bonabo who had a question.
Right. So yeah, maybe that's a good question that we can address right now, actually. So looking at your slide number 26, that's precise. It looks like, according to the ATAC 2050 report, technology is not providing any substantial improvement between 2019 and 2035. How about that? How would you explain this?
Okay, so I'm just going to try to share again my slide 26, which you should see. This one. Can you see it?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. So and the question is dealing between 2019 and 2035, correct? And,
yes, I believe Paul is talking about that. Yeah, exactly what you're pointing.
And you mean this element of the blue, which is considered as not having any effect that you can see in any of the scenarios, and which is the question. Actually, I think that the way I was not involved in the ATAG exercise, but my understanding is that they considered, and that's probably something which is a mistake, that they considered that the renewing of the fleet is being done at technology constant until we have new types of aircraft entering the fleet in 2035. So normally we should have here a much bigger effect associated with the blue element, which is a technology. So that's a good point from Paul. Actually, we should have a picture which shows a better and more efficient impact of technology as soon as not 2019, but when it recovers in 2024, etc. So that's a good point. I agree with you, Paul. This should be mentioned more clearly because it has an impact.
Thank you, Philippe. We had another question. I think it was more about incidental water pollution. Someone was talking about fuel jettisoning and this kind of thing, and if it has a significant impact on seawater.
Well, we are normally speaking of normal operations, and fuel jettisoning is not happening unless you have a major safety event for which you need to land just after the takeoff because you have a technical problem and you are jettisoning the fuel because otherwise you would be too heavy to land at a maximum takeoff weight. So this happens very rarely, and it is done at sufficiently high altitudes so that the fuel which is jettisoned is combining and is not falling down to a high level of impact. So this has nothing to do with climate change. This is something which is doing with safety, and something that's good that we have this question, because something I forgot to mention is that all the levers that we are experimenting, including the SAF, including any new technology, will never compromise the safety. Safety is and remains #1 priority, whatever solutions we are implementing.
And again, these things are marginal. And if I may, just a reminder, you know, when the fuel is released at high altitude, you know, it's as Philippe just said, it's just, you know, doesn't fall like that, like, you know, on the ground. You know, it becomes an aerosol, you know, for most of it, you know, that is dispersed in the air. But again, we're talking about marginal situations for the sake of safety. And the last one is not.
And it will be mainly for long-haul aircraft, where the difference between the maximum takeoff weight and the maximum landing weight is huge. If you are considering short-haul aircraft, very often they do not take off at the maximum takeoff weight, so they can land without jettisoning. So that's very limited in occurrences.
Gael, Jean-David
yes.
Try to add something, I think. Jean-David, you want to talk? Yes.
Non, c'est correct. J'ai eu mes réponses, merci.
Okay.
It was thumb up. He was not waving his hand.
Sorry. So in English, no, it's a thumb up, not a hand up. It's just a thumb up. Thank you for the answer.
Okay.
No problem. And last but not the least, it's more of a comment than a question per se. Someone was mentioning that the AAE in France was advocating for electric propulsion, and maybe I can actually kind of take that question. You know, when it comes to technologies, there are 3 ways to you know, phase out hydrocarbon fuel-based and fossil fuel-based technologies, you know, in aviation propulsion. The short and medium term is you know, of course, sustainable aviation fuels, and then you have 2 technologies that are kicking in. And as soon as, you know, the 2 to 5 coming years, for #1, we have electric and hybrid propulsion systems, and then at some point hydrogen use as a fuel, you know, and you start, you know, finding some good publications on the matter. And I would like to mention a report that was actually prepared, I mean, led by 2 alumni, including myself, the second one being Lu Jiang on the call, ACRP Research Report 236, Preparing Your Airport for Electric Aircraft and Hydrogen Technologies. That's the very first guidebook on the matter, with an airport-centered vision of these issues if you want to learn more about electric propulsion, hydrogen technologies, and how they can come through, you know, because when we think about innovation, it's just not about the cool aerospace engineering technologies. At some point, we have to talk about integration into existing aviation systems, policies, and all of that. But again, the best has yet to come. We have a lot on the horizon. And again, aviation is one of these industries that has identified its carbon contribution, I believe, Philippe, very early in the journey against climate change, and that is doing a lot with a plan that is set for delivering Fly Net Zero by 2050.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yes,
and
please.
Just one comment. Whatever the fuels of the future or the energy of the future will be, whether it is electric, hydrogen, SAF, or any of them, and I think that we will need all of them. The challenge is also how you make this energy available, because if you produce electricity coming out of coal, you don't solve the problem, because your emissions will be higher elsewhere, and that will not work as well. So we have to clean the way to produce the energy and to make this energy available for all sectors. And probably the SAF, you know, if we consider that electricity can be more easily used for ground transportation, for instance, for cars, for trucks, etc., then the policymakers should try to give priority to SAF for aviation, because for long haul, it's very difficult to decarbonate if we don't have SAF.
Absolutely. Thank you, Philippe. And again, I think one of the key words here is achieving net zero all along the supply chain, not only with the aircraft, but from the energy generation or fuel production, you know, to the consumption actually of that energy vector. Thank you, Philippe. Thank you so much for your insightful keynote presentation. Well, I think time is up. Everyone, thank you so much for joining this event. Do not forget that this event was recorded, available on the YouTube channel of ENAC alumni, so do not hesitate to spread the word. And on the same YouTube channel, in the same playlist for the 2022 International Day of the Chapters, you can find videos from other chapters that you could not have the opportunity to present today. They have recorded video. Please take a moment for watching these videos. Congratulations again to Gladys and to ENAC alumni USA for their respective award. Thank you very much to Estelle, to our chairs, vice chairs, and other contributors for all their hard work on putting together this live event and everything around International Day of the Chapters. And of course, I see you at the 2023 International Day of the Chapters, because this will be an annual event. And please, we count on you for joining the chapters and contributing to all that positive energy that produces a lot for advancing aviation and building our communities worldwide. Thank you very much. Stay safe and talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.